So guys, you might think I'm a bit crazy, but there may be like a fifth vector to hair loss that people have missed, and that is applying fats to your head. Specifically applying long-chain unsaturated fatty acids that may have some promise as an adjunct to your big three hair protocol. I've done a video on the big three: some form of DHT blocker, some form of cell cycle manipulator like minoxidil, and some form of antifungal shampoo like ketoconazole shampoo are pretty much your big three options for combating hair loss. And then there's a fourth one, which is something like an androgen receptor blocker like RU58841. But I'm going to look into the research of a fifth potential for hair loss if you are concerned about hair loss. And obviously this isn't going to be a miracle. Obviously the big three is always going to be what we have currently available, our best option to combat hair loss at the moment. However, I do think that looking at alternative vectors is also really important, even if it just helps you understand a little bit more about your own body. So this study looked at the components of saw palmetto and whether it has any efficacy in combating the conversion of testosterone to DHT by 5-alpha reductase. Now, the key function of this enzyme is it catalyzes the reduction of the double bond in testosterone to convert T to DHT. As you can see in this image, DHT is the exact same molecule as testosterone except one less double bond in the area I've highlighted. So for clinical outcomes of hair loss, stopping 5-alpha reductase doing its job, we know that DHT is the key player in hair loss and will significantly damage your follicles and lead to miniaturization and death of your hair follicles over time. So stopping this is really important, and this is why things like finasteride, dutasteride, DHT blockers work so well. But this study, in using a computational model of 5-alpha reductase, the enzyme itself, found that molecules that can bind to the 5-alpha reductase enzyme can assume basically two different positions. The productive position, so basically where the molecule is bound in such a way that it can carry out the double bond reduction of T to DHT, and then the unproductive position where the molecule is bound in such a way that it can't carry out the double bond reaction of T to DHT. Now, testosterone in the productive position is what is going to kill your hair. When testosterone is in the productive position of the 5-alpha reductase enzyme, it can then be converted to DHT. And this makes sense when you read what the researchers said. According to the PyRosetta computed binding energies, testosterone and finasteride have the same affinity for the unproductive position, whereas finasteride is a better candidate for binding the productive position, thus confirming the effectiveness of finasteride as a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor already known from clinical experience. So finasteride is great at blocking testosterone in the productive position, as you can see from the images I've put up here. So tell us something we don't know, right? But what they found after was the most interesting. And keeping in mind that the best inhibitors have more negative values for the productive position, the researchers found that the components of saw palmetto, such as oleic acid and linoleic acid, had even higher binding affinities and inhibition of 5-alpha reductase than finasteride itself, especially in the productive position, which is the one we want. And this basically led the researchers to conclude that on the basis of our computational results, long-chain and unsaturated fatty acids like oleic and linoleic acid are the best candidates from saw palmetto to act as competitive inhibitors of 5-alpha reductase with respect to saturated and short or middle chain fatty acids. So this got me thinking, would these long chain fatty acids be a substitute for a topical adjunct like something like minoxidil and substituting there? Now, I was slightly concerned about the chain length of these long fatty acids and their molecular weights. We know that longer molecules are generally heavier, and there is the concept of the 500 Dalton rule, and that is that molecules with a molecular weight itself of greater than 500 grams per mole have a rapidly decreasing bioavailability, as you can see, of skin permeation in line with the graph. So something that has, for example, a molecular weight of 750 grams per mole is simply too large to penetrate normal human skin, and you're not going to get any significant penetration. Anything under about 500, you're going to get close to 100% penetration depending on the carrier. But upon checking, this doesn't seem to be an issue. Oleic acid has a molecular weight of 282.46 grams per mole. Linoleic acid has a slightly lower molecular weight at 280.45 grams per mole. So both of these are well and truly under the 500 gram mark and would be able to permeate skin if you applied it topically to your head. And it isn't just their reaction with the 5-alpha reductase enzyme that is interesting. These long-chain fatty acids also contribute positively to the hair cycle in a few other nuanced ways, as seen in this study. When DHT binds to hair cells, the expression of something called DKK1 induces apoptosis, which is programmed cell death, and that is basically the death of your hair follicle. But linoleic acid reduced the expression of DKK1 and also increased the activation of the WNT beta-catenin signaling pathway, which basically regulates the cell cycle. And in this study, these long-chain fatty acids promoted the cell cycle such that growth factors were secreted. Basically, the acids induced proliferation of the dermal papilla cells, increased hair growth, and blunted the DKK1 death pathway of hair follicles. All of these are pro-growth and anti-death for your hair follicle pathways. And as you can see in the charts, for increasing concentrations of linoleic acid, cell proliferation is increased and DKK1 expression was decreased once concentration hit about 30 micrograms per mil. Now, I'm not exactly sure what oral or topical dose you'd need to do to hit 30 micrograms per mil cellular concentration of these long-chain fatty acids, but perhaps that is a question for another time, and one potentially worth exploring. As just going to tell people to go and drink long-chain fatty acids probably isn't the best idea. There are obviously a lot of other considerations like heart health, cholesterol, lipid panels, but I do find it very interesting that certain hair growth signaling factors are upregulated by linoleic acid and oleic acid, and these may have some promise if more research is done as like a 4th or 5th option for adding into your hair loss protocol or prevention protocol. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I really love sharing this science with you, and I will see you in the next video.